There is an old man on a rock in the middle of the sea. The year is approximately AD 95. The island is called Patmos, a small, volcanic outcropping in the Aegean, roughly 10 miles long, shaped like a crescent, composed mostly of black basalt and silence. The Romans use it as a place of exile. They send people there when they want them to disappear without the inconvenience of execution. The old man's name is John. He is, by most scholarly estimates, somewhere near 90 years old. He was once a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. He once ran faster than Peter to an empty tomb. He once leaned his head on the shoulder of Jesus at a table in Jerusalem, on the last night before everything fell apart. That was 60 years ago. Every other man who sat at that table is dead. Andrew, crucified. Philip, crucified. James, John's own brother, beheaded by Herod Agrippa, the first of the 12 to die. Thomas, tradition says a spear in India. Peter, crucified upside down in Rome, according to Eusebius, who records this in his ecclesiastical history just 2 centuries later. Matthew, Bartholomew, Simon the Zealot, all gone, one by one, across decades and continents. The men who had walked with Jesus had been hunted down and killed. And here is John, alone on a rock, the last one left. He is not here by choice. Emperor Domitian, who Eusebius tells us despised the Christian movement with particular fury, had John brought to Rome, according to early church tradition, and attempted to execute him. The attempt failed. Domitian, apparently unable to kill the last apostle, settled for the next best thing. He sent him to Patmos, to a cave, to work the mines, to disappear. We will come back to what happened next on that island. But first, we need to go back 4,000 years, because what happened to John on Patmos was not new. It was part of a pattern so old and so consistent that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. God has a habit, a very specific, very strange, very beautiful habit. He tends to show up when everyone else has left. You will not find this pattern on a mountain surrounded by crowds. You will not find it in a temple full of priests, or a palace full of advisors, or a synagogue full of scholars. Again and again, across thousands of years and dozens of lives, the same thing happens. The noise stops. The people leave, and then something else arrives. The first time it happens in Scripture, the person it happens to is no one anyone expected. Her name is Hagar. She is an Egyptian slave woman in the household of Abraham and Sarah. She has no legal rights, no social standing, and no power over what happens to her body or her future. Sarah, desperate for a child and unwilling to wait on God any longer, instructs Abraham to take Hagar as a secondary wife. Hagar conceives, and then, as anyone who has ever observed a complicated household might have predicted, everything goes sideways. Sarah becomes jealous. Abraham, unwilling to navigate the conflict, essentially hands Hagar back to Sarah and tells her to do as she pleases. Sarah makes Hagar's life unbearable, and Hagar does the only thing available to a woman in her position. She runs. She runs into the desert of Shur, a region scholars describe as one of the most inhospitable places in the ancient world. An unending expanse of yellow sand and gravel between Canaan and Egypt. The Hebrew word Shur means the wall. No water, no shade worth mentioning. And for a pregnant woman alone, it is not a refuge. It is a sentence. No one knows where she is. No one is looking for her. In the ancient world, a foreign slave woman fleeing into the wilderness was not a rescue mission. She was simply gone, and that is exactly when it happens. Here's what most people miss about this moment. Genesis 16 tells us that the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. Scholars have noted for centuries that this is the very first appearance of the angel of the Lord in all of Scripture, a figure who speaks with the full authority of God Himself, who many theologians identify as the pre-incarnate Christ. And the first person this figure seeks out, the first recorded encounter in the entire Bible, is not Abraham, not Isaac, not any of the patriarchs whose names we know from Sunday school. It is a foreign slave woman, alone in a desert, who wasn't even looking for God. He calls her by name, Hagar. Biblical commentator Laura Copley notes this is the only known instance in all of ancient Near Eastern literature where a deity directly addresses a woman by name. Not Eve, not Sarah, not Deborah, Hagar, an Egyptian, an outsider, a person the world had already decided didn't count. He sees her, he hears her, and he speaks directly into the worst moment of her life. What floors Hagar is not the promise he makes, though the promise is staggering. What stops her in her tracks is something smaller and larger at the same time. She gives God a name. No one else in Scripture does this. She calls him El Roa. In Hebrew, this carries a weight that the English translation struggles to hold. It is not simply the God who sees. The root verb ra'ah means not just to observe, but to look with full attention, to behold. El Roa is the living one who looks back at you. She names the well Bir Lahai Roy, the well of the living one who sees me. She was in the wilderness. She was alone. She had been used and discarded by people who should have protected her. And the God of the universe looked back at her. Stay with me, because this is only the first time. The second time the pattern appears, the person it happens to is someone you would not describe as innocent. Jacob is a man who has spent his entire life getting what he wants by getting there first. His name, in Hebrew, comes from the word akev, heel. He grabbed his twin brother Esau's heel in the womb, trying to be born first. He tricked his blind father Isaac into giving him the firstborn's blessing. He deceived his way through 20 years with his father-in-law Laban, and now he is finally heading home, wealthy, married, with 11 sons and vast herds of livestock. But between him and home stands his brother Esau, the same Esau he wronged, and Esau is coming toward him with 400 men. Jacob sends his wives, his children, and all his possessions across the ford of the Jabbok River, a dark tributary of the Jordan, roughly 20 miles north of the Dead Sea. He stays behind, alone on the riverbank. The text of Genesis 32 is deliberate about this. It slows down. It makes you feel the weight of the word. Jacob was left alone, and then someone arrives. We don't know when. The text simply says, "A man wrestled with him until daybreak." No introduction, no explanation. Just two figures in the darkness, at the edge of a river, locked in a struggle that lasts through the entire night. Jacob does not ask questions. He does not negotiate. He fights. But it gets stranger. Somewhere in the night, it becomes clear that Jacob's opponent is not winning. Not because Jacob is stronger, but because Jacob simply will not let go. And so the man does something that no human being has the power to do. He touches the socket of Jacob's hip. One touch, and the bone dislocates. Jacob is fighting with a wrenched hip in the dark at a river crossing, and he still will not let go. When the man asks to be released because dawn is breaking, Jacob, weeping according to the prophet Hosea, who describes this same scene centuries later, makes a demand that is either the most audacious or the most desperate thing anyone has ever said to God. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And here, is the moment everything shifts. The man asks, "What is your name?" Jacob says, "Jacob." In that culture, to give your name was to give your history, and Jacob's history is written in his name. The deceiver, the heel grabber, the one who took what wasn't his. He is not answering a question about syllables. He is making a confession, and the man gives him a new one. Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and have overcome. Jacob calls the place Peniel. In Hebrew, this means the face of God, because he says, "I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." He limps away into the sunrise, changed, marked, and strangely, indestructibly blessed. Pay attention to this. Jacob did not find God in a worship service. He did not find him in a sacred moment of peace and reflection. He found him alone, at night, at a crossing he was terrified to make, and the encounter left him permanently wounded. The blessing came with a limp. Sometimes the thing God gives you in the wilderness is not healing. Sometimes it is a wound that reminds you, every time you walk, where you have been, what you have wrestled, what you refuse to let go of. The third time the pattern appears, the person is a man at the end of his rope. Elijah has just had the greatest moment of his prophetic career. On Mount Carmel, in front of all Israel, he has called down fire from heaven and exposed the prophets of Baal as frauds. 850 false prophets, one prayer, one bolt of fire, the entire nation watching. It should have been the turning point. It should have changed everything. Instead, Queen Jezebel sends him a message the next morning. She will have him dead by this time tomorrow. And Elijah, the man who just stood alone against 850, runs. He runs south, past Beersheba, into the wilderness of Sinai. He sits down under a broom tree, a low desert shrub, barely enough to shade a person lying flat, and he prays to die. "It is enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my fathers." Then he lies down and sleeps. He is exhausted, in a way that has a clinical name now. What 1 Kings 19 describes, the isolation, the worthlessness, the physical collapse after great exertion, the wish to simply stop existing, is something counselors and scholars have written extensively about. Elijah is not weak. He is not faithless. He is depleted. He has been carrying something enormous, alone, for a very long time. And God's first response to all of this is not a sermon. An angel touches him, not once, twice, gently both times, and says, "Arise and eat." That is all. No rebuke, no theological correction, no instruction to count his blessings or remember the miracles. Just get up, eat something. The journey ahead of you is too great for you. Bread baked on hot coals, a jar of water. Elijah eats, lies down again, eats a second time, and then travels 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the same mountain where Moses once hid in the cleft of a rock. He finds a cave, he goes inside, and God comes to him there, not in the great wind that shears the mountain, not in the earthquake, not in the fire. After all of these, after the spectacular, the dramatic, the overwhelming, there is the kol demama daka, the sound of sheer silence. In Hebrew, demama means stillness. Daka means thin or fine. It is sometimes translated as a still small voice, sometimes as a gentle whisper. What the Hebrew is reaching for is this: the thinnest possible sound. The kind of sound you can only hear when everything else has stopped. And this is where it gets remarkable. Because in an age where you carry the noise of civilization in your pocket, where silence has become the rarest thing on earth, where even our moments of solitude are interrupted by algorithms designed specifically to prevent us from being alone with our own thoughts. This is not just ancient theology. It is a diagnosis and a direction. God was not in the wind. He was not in the earthquake. He was not in the fire. He was in the silence that came after. The fourth time the pattern appears, it is Easter morning, and the person it happens to is a woman who has come to a garden to grieve. Mary Magdalene arrives at the tomb while it is still dark. John's Gospel tells us she comes alone, before Peter, before the beloved disciple, before anyone else, because grief does not wait for sunrise, because the body of the man who had changed everything about her life was in that tomb, and she needed to be near it. She finds the stone rolled away. She runs to get Peter and John. They come, they look, they see the burial cloths lying there, and they go home. The text of John 20 is almost brutal in its brevity. They saw, they believed, they went home, and Mary stands outside the tomb, weeping. Everyone else has left. The disciples have gone back to whatever confused, shattered version of their lives is available to them now. The angels have spoken and departed. The greatest event in human history has occurred, and Mary is crying in a garden, alone, because she doesn't know any of that yet. Here is the part nobody tells you. The resurrection, on the morning it happened, did not feel like resurrection to the people closest to Jesus. It felt like an empty tomb where a body used to be. It felt like loss, compounded by confusion. It felt like someone had taken away the last thing she had, the chance to honor him with burial spices and a final act of care. She turns. She sees a man she assumes is the gardener. He asks why she is weeping. She asks if he has taken the body so she can go retrieve it. She has no idea she is talking to the person she is looking for. And then, he says her name, just her name. One word, Mary. She turns. The Greek text uses strapis, a turning of the whole body, a pivot of the entire self. And she says, Rabboni, not just teacher. The suffix oni in Aramaic carries the weight of deep personal relationship. It is the word for someone who has shaped the very texture of how you think and who you are. It is not a title, it is a recognition. In 2 syllables, she knows him completely. She had been weeping alone in a garden. Every other person had left. And the risen Christ chose, of all the moments and all the places and all the people, this one, this woman, this garden, this particular grief. Now watch what happens next. The pattern is not random, and it is not just historical. Hagar ran into a wilderness she did not choose, and El Roi found her there. Jacob was alone at a river crossing, facing the most terrifying morning of his life, and God showed up not to comfort him, but to wrestle him into his destiny. Elijah collapsed under a desert shrub and asked to die, and God touched him twice, fed him, and spoke to him in the thinnest possible voice. Mary wept in a garden while everyone else went home, and the resurrected Christ said her name first. If you are in a season of solitude you did not choose, if life has emptied out around you in ways you did not plan for, if the people have gone and the silence has become something you don't quite know how to inhabit, this pattern is for you. Not because your solitude will automatically resolve the way these stories resolved, but because the God of Hagar and Jacob and Elijah and Mary is the same God who is aware of exactly where you are right now. Not eventually, now. You may be at your Bir Lahai Roy without knowing it, the well of the living one who sees you. Now we go back to the old man on the rock. John is on Patmos, AD 95. The exile is confirmed by the church historian Eusebius in his Ecclesiastical History, one of our most important primary sources for the early church. Irenaeus, writing even earlier, places John's visions at the close of Domitian's reign. John is somewhere near 90 years old. He is the last of the 12 still alive. Think about what that means for a moment. He has outlived every one of them. He watched James, his own brother, beheaded by Herod Agrippa, the first of the 12 to die, recorded in Acts 12. He watched Peter go to Rome. He has heard, through the fragile networks of the early church, how the others went, some with drama, some in obscurity, all of them gone before him. John is not just alone on an island. He is alone in a way no other human being in history has been alone. He is the last living person who put his hand in the hand of Jesus, who sat across a table from him, who heard his laugh, who watched him die, who saw him alive again, and now he is here, on a volcanic rock, a mine by some accounts, a cave by others. The Romans did not send their exiles to comfortable places. There is no congregation to preach to, no letters arriving from fellow apostles, because there are no fellow apostles left. Just the sound of the Aegean, the smell of volcanic soil, the weight of 90 years lived in the shadow of something so vast and holy that most people cannot even look at it directly. And then the Lord's Day comes. John writes, "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet, not a whisper this time, not a still small voice, not a gentle touch twice in the darkness, a trumpet behind him, and John turns, the same turning that Mary did in the garden, and he falls on his face like a dead man. What he sees cannot be contained in neat language, and to his credit, John does not try to make it neat. Feet like burnished bronze, eyes like a flame of fire, a face like the sun shining in full strength, 7 stars in the right hand, a sharp two-edged sword from the mouth, a voice like the sound of many waters, and then, do not be afraid. 3 words. They are the same words, in spirit if not always in syllable, that God has spoken every single time he has shown up to someone who was completely alone. Do not be afraid. Hagar by her spring, Jacob at his river, Elijah in his cave, Mary in her garden, John on his island. Do not be afraid. And then the Lord gives John something to do. He gives him the book of Revelation, chapters 1 through 22, the opening of all 7 seals, the 4 living creatures, the great multitude that no one can number, the river of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God, the city where there is no more death, no more mourning, no more crying, no more pain, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of all things, saying, "Behold, I am making all things new." The most sweeping vision in all of Scripture, the document that has shaped the theology, the art, the music, the hope, and the imagination of 2 billion Christians for 2,000 years. It was not given to an emperor, not written in a cathedral, not handed down in a palace or a council chamber, or the halls of the powerful. It was given to one man, alone, in a cave, on a black volcanic rock in the Aegean Sea, where Rome had sent him to be forgotten, and it has never been forgotten. So here is what 4,000 years of this pattern tells us. The first thing is this: solitude is not abandonment. Every person in this video thought, at some level, that they had been left. Hagar had been discarded by the people who were supposed to protect her. Jacob was alone, because he was terrified of what the morning would bring. Elijah was alone, because the victory had cost him everything, and the threat had swallowed the rest. Mary was alone, because grief had outlasted the crowd. John was alone, because an emperor wanted him to disappear. Not one of them was actually alone, not for a single moment. If you are in a season right now where the solitude feels permanent, where the silence carries a weight you weren't prepared for. The witness of Scripture, from Genesis to Revelation, is simply this: the God who found Hagar when nobody else was looking for her can find you. The God who showed up at the Jabbok knows which river crossing you are standing at tonight. The God who whispered to Elijah in the silence has not run out of things to say. The second thing is this: God has a habit of naming people in their wilderness. Hagar is named by God in the desert. Jacob is renamed by God at the river. Mary is called by name in the garden. John on Patmos is given a new assignment, a new identity, as the final witness to the whole story. Your wilderness is not where you lose yourself. It is where you find out who you actually are when everything else has been stripped away. The decorations come off, and what is left is someone God knows by name. The third thing, and this is the one to carry out of here, is the most important. Everything God gave these people in their alone place was meant for someone else. Hagar went back, and her son Ishmael became the father of a great nation. Jacob's wound, the wrenched hip, the limp he carried the rest of his life, became, of all things, a dietary law. To this day, in Jewish tradition, the sciatic nerve is removed from meat in honor of the place Jacob's hip was struck. His wound became a practice passed through 100 generations. Elijah's silence became a commission to anoint Elisha, who would go on to do twice as many miracles as his teacher. Mary became the first witness to the resurrection. Not Peter, who ran the fastest. Not the beloved disciple who believed when he saw the empty cloths. Mary, who stayed when everyone else left, who wept when she could have hidden, who turned when she heard her name. And John, exiled, aged, outliving everyone he had ever loved, wrote the last book of the Bible, from a cave, on a rock, for you. Whatever God is doing in you right now, in this season of solitude, it was never just for you. The desert you are crossing has a destination. The river you are wrestling at has a morning coming. The silence you are sitting in, the thin, quiet, cool Mahadaka of this stretch of your life, it is not empty. It just sounds that way right now. If this video has meant something to you, subscribe. A new one comes every week, and the next one goes somewhere you won't expect. And if you know someone in a wilderness right now, send this to them. You might be the well of Bir Lahai Roy, for someone you haven't thought of yet. The living one who sees. Maybe he sent you this video because he knew you would pass it on. We'll see you next time.